What we're going to cover today is around embedding data security for when you run critical workloads, but at an enterprise level. So we're going to explore it a little bit more broadly than what we've covered so far. So forgive me for not going into a deep dive technical involvement here. So let me just briefly introduce you to Thales. Unlike Microsoft and Dell, we are not household names. So I do appreciate that. It is pronounced Thales, by the way, as opposed to Thales or Tails. And we're probably one of the most innovative yet anonymous technology companies in the world. We've put lasers on Mars and we've developed encryption algorithms to secure a post-quantum computing world that are being assessed by the likes of NIST as the next generation of encryption algorithms. Something like about 7 or 8 cents in every 10 cents that floats across our worldwide banking system is protected in one way, shape or form by our technology. So I'll leave it with that and we'll move on to what's more important, which is why we're here today. And that is, why do we need an enterprise security approach to critical workloads? So let me start by sort of working through the problems we're seeing. So this report from IDC is last year in a COVID world, but it's still relevant to what we do today. Now, what we're seeing is 50% of all data is now stored in some sort of cloud environment. The interesting thing about that is that it means actually 50% of data is still stored on premise. And the first poll we saw emphasized how workloads are still running in closed data centers or on-premise environments as well as in cloud. So support for hybrid environments is critical to most organizations. The second thing about this report we uncovered is that of that cloud data, about half of it so far is sensitive cloud data. Now, what that means is as we move more critical workloads to the cloud, because we will, that percentage of sensitive data will only increase. So we've got those risks adding up as we go forward. So let's have a look at why we need an enterprise approach to data security. And I think we're getting into this challenge whereby customers are actually getting breached still to this day, even though we're spending ridiculously large amounts of money on trying to defend against it. What we're actually seeing is one in every 2 organizations has been breached at some point in their history. What that's pointing to is we're spending a lot of money to defend this, but we're not getting good outcomes. So to plagiarize someone else's comment here is that repeating the same approach and expecting a different outcome is, to be frank, insane. So we need to take a different approach to securing our data and our critical digital systems. And that is our segue into how do we secure critical workloads in the cloud in a way that allows us to do it at an enterprise level and not as a point solution. So when we work through this, if you go to a cloud environment, every cloud service provider, Microsoft included, will deem it as the responsibility of the customer to secure their data. And that's understandable because it's very hard or almost impossible to outsource risk. The cloud service provider will provide great security of the infrastructure and operational environment, but at the end of the day, you're responsible for securing your own data. Now, there's 2 ways in an enterprise level that you can do that. One of those is, of course, you can bring your own key, as we call it. So you can consume native cloud services such as encryption and key vaults and the like, and bring your own key, and that way you've got control or sovereignty control over that environment. The other alternative to that is what's called bring your own encryption, where you literally bring your encryption and apply it to cloud-based services and workloads. Both are viable solutions, and typically you can actually mix and match these depending on what the security level you need for your critical workload. To be perfectly frank, not all data needs to be secured, but when we start talking critical and sensitive workloads, you will need to apply some form of security around them and apply a security framework. So what does an enterprise approach look like? What's the difference between an enterprise approach and just simply applying key security or data security and encryption on a case-by-case basis? Well, let's get into what that looks like. So from a Thales perspective, and I'll try and put a bit more of a framework around it in a general sense, the foundation of most enterprise approaches to data security and key security and management is some form of hardware security module. And as your users, HSMs themselves internally to secure their environment, so they understand the value of this foundation of trust. Now, that said, this is an actual piece of hardware and therefore doesn't have the flexibility and performance that software allows. So typically what you'll find is you'll need some sort of middle layer that allows you to deliver this as a software or as a service type model. Now in Thales world, we have what we call the CipherTrust Data Security Platform, but there's other ways of doing it. Now, interestingly enough, you can join these together as part of your integrated service, or you can literally run them as standalone functions themselves. So you can actually run, if you don't need a high top secret security profile, you can run CipherTrust as a piece of software in a cloud or a multi-cloud or hybrid cloud environment. However, most of our clients who are looking to run critical workloads will typically have an integrated approach where they have both HSMs as the foundation of trust, the building blocks of trust, but then have some sort of data security framework over the top that has an enterprise methodology around it. So what does an enterprise methodology look like? Well, what it allows you to do is not be limited by one function. So enterprise approach typically will allow you to integrate things like data discovery and classification, so you can find where sensitive data is. Finding it is the first step, but then you need to protect it. Protecting it can take many different forms, from literally storage level protection, such as Dell can provide you with externalized key security that we complement Dell with. It can be using native encryption that's available within the Azure platform, or it can be using specific application suites that are enterprise ready and enabled. And the last thing around that is you then can leverage native cloud services such as the Azure Key Vault to allow you to leverage that and manage keys at an enterprise-wide level, both on-prem and in the cloud. So what we're trying to do as an enterprise approach is we're trying to cover any infrastructure, any workload, and any storage. So any infrastructure can be physical, virtual, or cloud. Any workload could be at the application layer. It could be at the microservice layer. It could be at the database layer. It could be at the unstructured data layer, at the file folder layer as well, or even right down to storage layer, or network layer for that matter. So that's what an enterprise approach looks like. So we then lead on to what do you need in order to be successful at that? And this is where the ecosystem that supports an enterprise approach has to apply. So you need to support all the different use cases that a client might have that needs to have data security or key security applied. So in our case, we integrate with the likes of SAP, SQL, DB2, Oracle, among dozens and dozens of databases that we support. We also integrate tightly with Microsoft Azure's services. We support things like Microsoft 365 and double key encryption. We support the Dell environment where we can embed data security into Dell storage solutions without compromising the deduplication and performance that you get from the Dell platform. So these are the important features of an enterprise approach to data security, as opposed to point solutions that may be available that do one job and one function only. So let me move on to the final sort of point of this, is what can you expect as outcomes from an enterprise approach? So what you should be looking for is something that actually gives you a multi-cloud hybrid solution that isn't tied to one platform or another. The second thing you'll get is you'll actually be able to meet regulatory and industry compliance obligations, both systematically, but also from a reporting and visibility perspective. The other thing you'll be able to do is you'll be able to retain sovereignty in these environments, whereby, if necessary, you can take control of both your data policies and data security frameworks, but also the keys that are associated with them. Another one is you get the big advantage of segregating people and processes. So you can discriminate between those who have the right to use data versus those who specify how data should be secured. And this is one of the flaws typically of point solutions, whereby if you use a native database encryption, for example, the database administrators are setting security frameworks and policies and are not segregating their roles from that of the security framework. So this is really important for anyone who's looking for best practices and meeting their controls. You'll also get this ability to centralize the control of data policy and key lifecycle, which, when you talk about hybrid cloud and multi-cloud environments, is very critical, because the cost of people and training and people making mistakes is one of the problems with point solutions. And this is really important for you as an enterprise to understand that. And of course, you can now more easily embed automation. In our platform, we run security APIs that allow you to consume all these services, almost like cloud services, at an API level. And this allows you the flexibility to create and embed these orchestration and automation processes into your enterprise data security and key security approach. But most importantly, the one outcome that you will get from this approach that no one sort of speaks about as such is it will help you prevent successful cyber attacks and data breaches. So I'll repeat that. It will help you stop those attacks from being successful, or those breaches from exposing data that damages your reputation or damages your business or organization financially. So what do you do as a going forward? I'd like to emphasize this, is that whatever strategy you put in place for enterprise data security, and it doesn't have to be us, you do need to build on a foundation of strength. So you can start with as small as you like and then grow it as you go forward. But if you start with a strategy and a plan, you're going to be more likely to be successful. So start with a strategy, start with a plan, and then map the capabilities of your enterprise solution to that plan.